Welcome back to the final Browns game reaction of the season. And I say final because yesterday the Browns lost to the Houston Texans in the wild card round of the playoffs in what was a really rough game for the Browns. A lot of bad signs in the first half of this one, obviously, but somehow the game got even worse after halftime. And the game for Cleveland certainly had some glimmers of hope, but by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, I was already going through my thought process on this kind of loss, which, to be honest, is a little bit easier to mentally work through than losing on something like a last-second field goal or a game-winning touchdown drive, because on those kind of losses, there's that nagging thought in your head of like, man, if only that one sequence or that one play or that one call, if only that one thing went the Browns' way, then maybe they're advancing to the divisional round. In this one, however, there's no room for those kind of delusions just based on the final score and how the events of the game unfolded in general. Cleveland would have needed an entire second half to have gone differently to have any sort of hope in this one. Something that I said in my pre-game fears video before the game that I probably should have put a little bit more stock into was the poor defensive starts that this team has had in the regular season, especially with those on the road, where, the poor defensive start lasted throughout the whole first half. And, while keeping Denzel Ward in the lineup after he was questionable, that was a boost in theory. Pretty much any notion of that was mitigated by Greg Newsome being taken advantage of in coverage, especially early on in the game, where there were a few splash plays while the game was still up in the air in the passing game for Houston that saw Newsome lose his man or get beat on a route. And those kind of plays not only kept Houston's drives going, obviously, but gave them, a lot of chunk plays down the field. At first, the offense was able to keep up with the Houston offensive attack, with Stefanski making it work in the passing game. The running game not really doing a whole lot, and that was one of my fears in that video that I mentioned as well, with the running game maybe not being the most dynamic in the second half of the season, especially in that regular season game against Houston. And in this game, even if the run game was doing some things, by the third quarter, the Browns had pretty much become one-dimensional. And I will say, 14-10 for the Browns after Kareem Hunt got that shovel pass touchdown. Probably the best I felt about the game's prospects for Cleveland, which makes sense because that's the one and only time that Cleveland had a lead. But it didn't last for very long, as the next offensive play for the Texans was a tight end screen that went to the house, with JOK leaving his guy to attempt a sack. In general, Owusu-Koramoah was actually one of the bright spots on defense. He was flying around, making tackles behind the line of scrimmage, and actually finishing tackles in the open field, which was another issue for the Browns defense in this one. But that play in general, that JOK left his man on, that was definitely a bad sequence there to put the Texans back in the lead. Stroud getting off way before JOK got there on that play, and that's where I will tip my hat to the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud as well, with the offensive line holding up very well in pass protection. Myles Garrett neutralizing the pass rush by Larrabee Tunsil pretty much with the rest of the Browns defensive line. And even when the Browns did get some pressure, CJ Stroud was able to either move in or out of the pocket to evade the pressure, and usually found someone open downfield. You had Nico Collins with multiple big plays. Mechie did a lot of good things against the Browns. Dalton Schultz was open a couple times. I think one of the times he dropped it, actually. But for the running game for Houston, Devin Singletary had some breakout runs that we didn't really see from Jerome Ford or Kareem Hunt for Cleveland. Another issue that the defense had that I mentioned was tackling, which is something that also popped up in the regular season during some of the defense's bad performances. Just in general, kind of felt like the defense's worst tendencies showed up in this one, and I do think that it takes a good offensive performance from a team like the Houston Texans to bring that out, so credit to them for that. But it's also, you can't really deny that Cleveland, their defense did not play up to what fans had come to expect in the first half of that game. Backbreaking sequence for the Browns defense at the end of the first half, when they appeared to have gotten a third down stop, but Ronnie Hickman called for a bit of a ticky-tack DPI, especially considering what was missed earlier on David Njoku. Again, not saying that those couple of calls are what cost the Browns game or anything. The Texans won that game through and through without, they didn't need officiating help, but and even after that defensive pass interference, that does not excuse Ronnie Hickman letting Dalton Schultz cross him up for a wide open touchdown pass, which is what made it 24-14 at the end of the half. Which, that score itself, not necessarily the end of the world, but they did have a chance to keep it at worst a 3-point deficit, or maybe if they get the ball at the end of the half, trying to maybe get a score to tie it or even take the lead, but couldn't do it. Instead, the Texans get a touchdown, and then once the second half started, it was the offense's turn to give a bad performance. In this case, they've been living by the Flacco these past few weeks, and they ultimately died by the Flacco in this one in the second half, although the loss isn't on any one specific thing in general. Like I just mentioned, the defense had an all-time bad performance in the first half, so Joe Flacco kind of finishing it off in the second half, I think it would be unfair to put the blame of this game all on him, because Joe Flacco had been doing actually pretty darn well up until that point where he was having a good game until the third quarter with the defense getting a stop on Houston's opening drive, thinking, okay, maybe we can get the comeback train going here. But unfortunately for Cleveland, Flacco's magic ran out on the following drive, and they were moving down the field pretty well too. They were getting into fringe field goal range. Joe Flacco was going to get sacked on a 1st and 10 at around the Houston 35. He tried to throw it away, but he got hit on the throw, and he ended up throwing it right to Steven Nelson, who returned it for a touchdown at 31-14. Obviously, in hindsight, you'd rather him take the sack there and live to play another down, but if he was trying to throw it away and just got hit as he threw, couldn't get enough on it, then I understand why Joe Flacco did what he did there. But the offense obviously getting the ball right back, needing to score, even to have an outside chance of coming back, getting it to a 4th and 2 with Joe Flacco just trying to force something to make something work, and Christian Harris read that throw all the way, took that one back to the house as well, and that pretty much made it game at 38-14. Fourth quarter was garbage time. I know the Houston put up some more points, and the Browns season ends there. I do want to do a proper retrospective on the season in general down the line where I go through, the ups and downs of the regular season and not just this one game. But honestly, this kind of feels like a bit like how the Cavs were left to dry in the playoffs last season, where yes, the regular season had its share of magical moments. Flacco fever was incredible to just see that go off and be a part of the fan base for that. But I'm fairly confident, and I'm fairly confident in the Browns core moving forward as far as them being a solid team. But this just felt like a missed opportunity to add something special for the players on the Browns roster this year. Good games for Houston. Obviously, the Texans vastly outplayed the Browns. They definitely earned that wild card win. I can hope that CJ Stroud goes nuts now that it's not against the team that I root for in the playoffs anymore. But, it's unfortunate that Stroud had to go off against the Browns like that, at least for me anyway. But, CJ Stroud has been incredible in his rookie season. And now that he's not playing the Browns anymore, I can wish him and the Houston Texans all the best moving forward. But again, I do plan on talking more about the Browns just overall season, but this video is just going to be kind of a wrap up on this game in general, what that ended the Browns season. Pretty much, a bit of an embarrassing display in general. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat this like, oh, well, they were playing with house money and they were getting injured. Like, we were talking like, okay, this team, with how they're playing right now, they have a chance to go out and actually do some things in the playoffs, and to kind of have it go out in a whimper like that, definitely disappointing. But, there were some good times along the way. Just this is a really bad bummer to end it on. But again, I'll do a video talking more about the Browns season as a whole, but with this one, this is just about how it ended, and unfortunately, not exactly a storybook ending for the Browns. And that's going to do it for me in this video. Thank you so much for watching. You made it this far into it. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like it. I cover some other teams in Ohio. Maybe like those videos as well. A couple of those teams, their season's still going on. But once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next one.